The hallways were a battlefield, a constant storm of noisy feet and boisterous laughter as students stormed through them every day. But amidst this chaos, an old man stood stoic as a rock, his footsteps a soft counterpoint to the din, his eyes holding a depth that hinted at stories the clamor could not drown out. He was Mr. Thomas, the school janitor. He pushed his squeaky cart like a loyal dog by his side, his steps slow and measured, a testament to years well lived and hard worked. His presence was a fixture, as immutable as the chipped paint on the lockers or the faded portraits of long-gone school board members hanging in the hallways. As the weeks passed, the old man became a silent observer of the ebb and flow of teenage life. He witnessed their triumphs and defeats, their joys and heartbreaks, their friendships forged and broken, all from the quiet sidelines. The students knew him, of course, but did they truly see him? Did they know that behind his weathered face and tired eyes lay a past so rich it could fill volumes? A past that made his wrinkled hands tremble sometimes, not with age, but with suppressed emotion. He had seen more winters than most could count, each one etching its tale on his face like a storybook. He had known love and loss, triumph and despair, hope and hopelessness. Life had dealt him a full hand, and he had played his cards close to his chest, never showing all his cards to anyone. His uniform was well worn, a second skin that hid the sharp suits he used to wear. It creaked like an old ship, carrying him through the choppy waters of life, always keeping him afloat, but never sailing into the calm harbor of ease. Now, as he navigated the familiar corridors, he saw not just students, but reflections of himself at different ages. In their boisterous laughter, he heard echoes of his own youth. In their eager steps, he saw the promise of dreams yet to be fulfilled. And in their questioning eyes, he recognized the innocence of those who had not yet faced the world's harsh winds. The old man bore the scars of a life fully lived, his body a roadmap of the journey he had traveled. Yet his spirit remained resilient, bending but not breaking under the weight of years. He moved through the school with a quiet dignity that belied the sneers and taunts that sometimes followed him. Each fresh wound on his soul was a new story to tell, each wrinkle a testament to a battle fought and won. And the students, what did they know of battles? They reveled in their own small victories, unaware that the real world was a much larger arena. They did not know that he had walked through fire and emerged stronger, tempered by the flames. They did not understand that his quiet strength was forged in the anvil of life's hardships, his endurance honed by the passage of time. Yet the old man did not begrudge them their ignorance. He knew that youth was a time for exploration, for finding oneself in the labyrinth of life. And what did he know about their struggles? The worries that gnawed at their hearts, the dreams that soared in their heads, the fears that whispered in their ears. There were times when the echo of laughter grated on his nerves, when the squeak of his cart was mocked, when the weight of his years seemed unbearable. On such days, he would seek solace in the dusty silence of the janitor's closet, surrounded by the ghosts of mops and brooms. There he would sit, lost in the labyrinth of his memories, where joy and sorrow danced in equal measure. In that cramped space, he would remember a time when his shoulders were broad and his stride was long, when his dreams were as limitless as the sky and his hopes as bright as the morning sun. He would remember the warmth of loved ones, the sting of betrayal, the pride of accomplishment, and the crushing blow of defeat. He had seen empires rise and fall, had watched progress march forward, halting and starting with each generation. He had seen wars rage and peace treaties signed, had seen the best and worst of humanity, and yet he still believed in the inherent goodness of people. He believed in the triumph of the human spirit, its ability to endure and overcome. And as he pondered these thoughts in the solitude of the closet, he would find strength anew. He would gather himself up like a worn coat, piece by piece, smoothing out the wrinkles of despair and replacing them with the smooth fabric of hope. He would remind himself that life was a tapestry, not just of sunshine and roses, but also of thorns and storms. In the tapestry of his life, the threads of joy and sorrow were intricately woven together, creating a pattern of resilience, a design of endurance. As the years spun their web around him, he learned to appreciate the tapestry for what it was, a masterpiece of life, flawed yet beautiful, fragile yet enduring. But as the old man pondered his life in the quiet corners of the school, the students outside lived theirs with abandon. They raced through the halls, their voices echoing with the joy of youth. They chased fleeting fancies and dreamed big dreams. They laughed and they cried, they loved and they lost, all under the watchful gaze of the old man. They teased him sometimes, called him names, made fun of his stooped shoulders and his slow gait. But he bore it all with a quiet dignity, his eyes filled with a sadness they could not fathom. He was a puzzle they could not solve, a mystery they could not comprehend. He was a relic of a bygone era, a reminder of times when life was harder, when men were men and women were women. He was a symbol of an age when respect was given freely and earned readily. He represented values they had not yet grasped: patience, perseverance, dignity, and quiet strength. The old man was a living legend, a folklore character come to life. He was a storyteller who spoke without words, a poet who wrote with his actions, an artist whose canvas was the school and its students. He painted murals with his work, sculpted lessons with his actions, and wove tales with his silent observations. He was a mentor without knowing it, a guide without realizing it, an inspiration without meaning to be. His life was a lesson in humility, his existence a sermon on patience. He was a beacon in the storm, a lighthouse in the darkness, a north star in the night. And as the years rolled by, the students changed, graduating one by one, taking their laughter and their dreams with them. But the old man remained, steadfast and eternal, a part of the school's very fabric. He was the school janitor, Mr. Thomas, the old man with the cart. And to some, he was more than that. To some, he was a legend, a myth, a living, breathing part of their school's history. The week dragged on. Monday bled into Tuesday, then Wednesday. The hallway echoed cruelly with the same mocking laughter. Mr. Thomas pushed his cart from hallway to hallway, sweeping floors, fixing chairs, carrying bags of trash, always under the mocking eyes of students who thought he was invisible. Yet he went about his work with quiet dignity, the faded patches on his uniform telling tales of a life well lived, of laughter and tears, of joys and heartaches. But those stories were lost on the students. They only saw a janitor. Or did they? One rainy Tuesday afternoon, the math teacher was sick, and the substitute stood in front of the class, struggling with a problem on the board. It wasn't your typical algebra or geometry. This was calculus. The numbers danced on the board like cryptic notes on a treble clef, and the substitute, a fresh-faced young woman named Sarah, was lost. The bell chimed, marking the passage of time and increasing the pressure. Soon the minutes were slipping away like sand through an hourglass, and the problem remained unsolved. In the back of the class, Julia leaned back, watching with amusement. Her lips curled into a smirk, and her dark eyes glittered with mischief. "Come on, Miss Davis, think," she called out, her voice laced with mockery. "Or better yet, why not send a text to Batman? He might be able to figure it out." Her laughter echoed around the room, mingling with snickers from other students. Sarah scowled, frustration creasing her forehead. She wanted to ignore Julia, but it was hard when the girl's laughter was so infectious, drawing in other students like moths to a flame. As Sarah grappled with the problem, Julia leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Why not call in the janitor?" she suggested loudly. "He looks smarter than you." The classroom erupted into laughter. At that very moment, the door opened and Mr. Thomas walked in. His shoulders slumped slightly as he entered the noisy room, his eyes scanning the sea of faces staring back at him. In his hand, he held his mop, its frayed ends dragging on the floor like a forgotten melody. He had intended only to clean the mud, tracked in by the rain, to weave his silent path between desks and chairs, another routine Tuesday in his monotonous life. But as he approached the board, he noticed Sarah's furrowed brows and the remnants of chalk dust on her fingertips. He glanced at the clock, realizing the math teacher must be running late. Without hesitation, he set down his mop, walked towards the chalkboard, and picked up the chalk. A hush fell over the classroom, silencing the echo of laughter. Sarah turned round, her eyes wide with surprise. "Mr. Thomas," she began, unsure how to react. "I just need to clean the board," he replied, his voice raspy with disuse, yet carrying a surprising strength. No, it's fine," Sarah stammered, realizing too late that she had made a mistake. She gestured to the problem on the board, hoping he wouldn't notice her panic. "It's nothing really," she said, forcing a smile. And then something incredible happened. The old man paused, his gaze fixed on the problem. Time seemed to stand still, the ticking of the clock the only sound in the silent room. And then, as if waking from a dream, Mr. Thomas began to write. Line after line, he worked, his movements quick, precise, confident, erasing and rewriting with a chalky grace that spoke of years of practice rather than mere chance. Within minutes, what had stumped Sarah for so long was solved. He underlined the answer, set the chalk down, and stepped back. Gasps filled the classroom. One boy whispered, "No way." Another muttered, "How did he do that?" Julia's face burned red as she snapped, "That doesn't prove anything. Maybe it was just luck." But her voice lacked the certainty it once carried. Mr. Thomas said nothing. He bent down to pick up his mop again, and as he walked away, his shoulders straightened slightly, the faded cloth becoming a banner of quiet pride. As he left the room, whispers followed him, bouncing off the walls like rubber balls. "Did you see that? I can't believe it. Who is he?" The substitute teacher, still in shock, sank into her chair. Sarah knew she had witnessed something extraordinary, something that defied logic, and left her questioning everything she thought she knew. By the next morning, the entire school buzzed with rumors. Students whispered in hallways, "Did you hear? The janitor solved a problem the teachers couldn't," and others swore they had seen it with their own eyes. In the cafeteria, he was surrounded by curious faces, some respectful, some mocking. And when one asked directly, "Mr. Thomas, where did you learn that?" he smiled faintly and said, "Knowledge does not belong only to the young," then turned back to his work, ignoring Julia, who shouted after him, "Don't be fooled, he's still just a janitor." The following weeks were a blur of numbers and melodies. In the midst of it all, Mr. Thomas became a reluctant hero, solving problems that baffled students and leaving them awestruck. He didn't revel in their amazement, nor did he shy away from it. He simply accepted it as part of his strange new reality. Then one day, another unexpected incident revealed more. The music teacher had fallen ill before the big rehearsal for graduation. The air vibrated with tension as the choir huddled together discussing the predicament. They needed someone who could sit-read the piano score, and time was slipping away like the notes of an unfinished song. Suddenly, a voice cut through the tension. "I can help," came from Mr. Thomas, who was sweeping near the stage. The students turned toward him, their eyes filled with disbelief. You can't even tune the piano," one student sneered. "Don't embarrass yourself, old man," another added. Ignoring them, Mr. Thomas sat at the bench, adjusted the seat, and placed his hands on the keys. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then music poured out, rich and flawless, filling the hall with melody so powerful that the choir stopped mid-whisper, frozen in awe. When he finished, silence lingered before erupting into disbelief. "Unbelievable," one student breathed. "Where did he learn that?" The skeptical choir teacher shook her head slowly and whispered, "He plays like a professional." Julia, pale and shaken, forced a laugh and muttered, "It's just a trick. Don't let him fool you." But even her friends avoided her eyes. Later that evening, Miss Carter found him in the janitor's closet, where he was putting away his mop. She looked at him with quiet determination and said, "Mr. Thomas, I saw what you did in class, and I heard you play the piano. Who are you really?" He met her gaze for a long moment before shaking his head and replying, "I'm just the janitor." She turned to leave, but as she stepped into the hall, she heard him whisper to himself, "There was a time when I was more." From that day on, Ms. Carter began to search for answers, poring over yearbooks, asking retired teachers, hoping to uncover the past of the enigmatic janitor. But he remained elusive, his story hidden behind layers of mystery. Meanwhile, the students continued to marvel at his abilities, their whispers echoing through the halls. Some claimed he had once been a professor, others whispered that he was a retired musician. Stories grew wild, each version trying to explain what they had seen. Yet Julia clung to her disbelief, determined not to lose the image she had built. One day she cornered him near the lockers, her eyes sharp with anger. "Stop pretending," she spat. "You'll never be more than a cleaner. Whatever you once were doesn't matter. Look at you now, pathetic." For the first time, Mr. Thomas looked directly at her, his voice calm but carrying the weight of steel. "You judge me by what you see today, Julia, but one day you will learn that a person's worth is not measured by a uniform." She faltered, her smirk vanished, and for the first time she had no answer. The truth was, Mr. Thomas was a man with a past filled with music, learning, and life. But it wasn't his past that defined him. It was the quiet dignity he carried, the respect he commanded, and the kindness he offered to everyone. He was more than a janitor. He was. A few weeks ago, a young woman posted her experience on Reddit. I'll let her tell the story. "It was my daughter's graduation day. Our small town has only one high school. The gym was decorated with colorful banners and balloons. The place was packed full of students in gowns, their families and friends clapping from the stands, and teachers bustling with pride. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, but behind the curtains backstage, chaos had erupted. The keynote speaker had cancelled at the last minute. My husband, the principal, was frantically whispering to the staff, 'We cannot leave the stage empty. We need someone to speak.' One of the teachers hesitantly suggested, 'What about Mr. Thomas?' The principal blinked in shock. 'The janitor? Are you serious?' But with no alternative, and the program about to collapse, he reluctantly agreed. When his name was called, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Parents frowned, students whispered. Some couldn't contain themselves and laughed out loud. My daughter Julia was seated on the far side with her friends, and I saw her smirk at them. She leaned over and said, 'Oh God, the janitor is going to speak at our graduation. This is ridiculous.' I gave her a sharp look. 'Don't be ridiculous, Julia. This isn't funny.' She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath that I couldn't hear. Mr. Thomas walked slowly onto the stage. His worn shoes echoed on the polished floor. He was tall and thin, with thinning grey hair and a neatly trimmed white beard. He walked with a slight stoop, but his posture was steady, despite the sea of doubtful eyes upon him. He adjusted the microphone and paused to let his gaze sweep across the audience. The crowd was silent, stunned by the sudden change and unsure of how to react. Then, slowly, a smattering of applause began, polite but hesitant. Mr. Thomas raised his hand for silence and waited patiently until the noise subsided. The gym was deathly silent now, so silent that even the banners fluttering in the draft seemed loud. "Good afternoon," he finally said, his voice surprisingly calm and clear. "I have swept these halls for many years, and I have seen you grow. I have heard your laughter, sometimes cruel, sometimes kind, and I have watched you mature from awkward freshmen into graceful young adults ready to take on the world. I know that many of you believe I am nothing more than a janitor. You think I've got low education, little experience, and less to say. But I am more than this uniform, and you are not as smart as you think." He paused, and I saw uneasy shifts in the crowd, parents exchanging glances, students avoiding their peers' eyes. A few sniffled, realizing the gravity of the situation. "Let me tell you a story," Mr. Thomas continued. "Long before this uniform, I stood in classrooms as a professor of mathematics at a university in another state. I stood on stages as a concert pianist performing Mozart and Beethoven. I published research, I performed concerts, and I received many honors for both my scholarship and my teaching. And then life struck me harder than I could withstand. I lost my wife, I lost stability, and I lost myself. When I needed work to survive, I accepted this job. I did not come here without a reason. I did not want to hide from you. I wanted to see if you would welcome me. I wanted to see if you would accept me. And I must admit, I was both surprised and disappointed at the way I was treated. But I have learned much from you, just as you have learned from me. Do not misunderstand me. I am not trying to excuse my actions. Instead, I want to show you that no matter what profession you enter, the most important thing is to preserve your humanity." His words hung in the air, resonating with the audience. I could feel the tension in the gym, thick and heavy, like the humidity of a summer night. Some faces were downcast, ashamed, while others were thoughtful, hanging on his every word. Even Julia seemed stunned. Her earlier smirk completely vanished, replaced by a look of dawning realization. Mr. Thomas cleared his throat and continued, "Many of you may not know this, but I have a PhD in mathematics, and a master's degree in music. Before becoming a janitor, I taught at a university and was an accomplished pianist. Life dealt me a harsh hand, but it did not break me. So do not judge a man solely by his appearance. There is more between heaven and earth, and in each other, than we can ever imagine." He paused, letting his words sink in. "My story is not meant to boast or brag, but to inspire you to look beyond appearances, to recognize the dignity in every individual, and to embrace the beauty of diversity." The speech continued, each sentence echoing with wisdom and experience, tales of a life well lived, of challenges overcome and dreams pursued. He spoke of love lost and found, of passions ignited and nurtured, and of the unwavering spirit that had carried him through life's storms. His voice resonated with emotion, painting vivid pictures in the minds of his listeners. As minutes turned into what seemed like hours, his audience was captivated. Laughter rippled through the crowd at his witty anecdotes, while gasps and murmurs of awe followed tales of triumph over adversity. Through it all, his eyes twinkled with mischief, his smile crinkled at the corners, and his hands danced with expressive gestures. By the time Mr. Thomas concluded his speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the occasional sniffle or cough. Finally, the applause erupted, starting as a trickle and rising to a thundering ovation. Parents stood, cheering, students applauded, and teachers, their faces a mixture of surprise and admiration, joined in the standing ovation. Even Julia, tears streaming down her face, clapped furiously, her earlier smirk and sarcasm completely forgotten. The principal rushed onto the stage, his face splitting into a wide grin. "Mr. Thomas, that was amazing. The students loved it. I couldn't ask for a better commencement address." He extended his hand, and Mr. Thomas clasped it, his grip firm and warm. "It was my pleasure, Principal. These kids deserve all the inspiration they can get. They're the future, after all." The two men shared a knowing smile, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had formed during that extraordinary graduation speech. That night, the school organized a small reception in Mr. Thomas's honor. Teachers, staff, and some students gathered in the auditorium, their faces aglow with admiration and gratitude. At the center of it all was Mr. Thomas, surrounded by ushers, his modest demeanor belying the monumental impact he had made that day. The principal took to the podium, a wide grin on his face. "To Mr. Thomas," he began, his voice echoing in the near-empty auditorium, "whose life reminds us that respect is owed to all, regardless of their station in life." As he unveiled the plaque, the words gleaming in the soft light, a hush fell over the crowd. It was a testament to Mr. Thomas's quiet dignity and indomitable spirit. Later that evening, as Mr. Thomas stood before the plaque, the words seeming to glow in the dim light, a wave of emotion washed over him. Years of silence, of being overlooked and underestimated, suddenly seemed to lift from his shoulders. He wasn't just a janitor, nor was he merely a former professor or pianist. He was Mr. Thomas, a man whose life was a testament to resilience, wisdom, and the enduring power of the human spirit. In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of applause and the glow of the newly unveiled plaque, he realized that his story had touched the hearts of those around him, and as he stepped back into the shadows, a contented smile played on his lips. The silence now was different, no longer filled with the hum of invisibility, but with the quiet understanding that sometimes the most profound truths come from the most unexpected sources.